If the season were to start today, somewhere in the third week of July, what would the Montreal Canadiens lineup look like? One guy who's been following them for a while, as a matter of fact, he's a former scout with the Montreal Canadiens. He has his opinion. He's going to give his lineup. I'll give mine, and then we'll talk about it. I can't wait. Grant McCagg of Recruits.ca is coming up right here on the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.
With all the players the Montreal Canadiens have on their contract, especially at the forward position, does Juraj Slafkovsky start the season in Montreal? And is there a veteran who's actually in danger of not being a starter? We'll take a look at it. But before we do, it's brought to you. The Sick Podcast is by 8.6 Beer, of course. Intense by nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark. And La Cage, if the last time you went to La Cage was when it was called La Cage au Sport. Remember that? Well, then it's time you go back to La Cage because the menu will surprise you. He joined me about a week ago to talk about the Canadiens drafting Juraj Slafkovsky. Prior to that, he had joined me probably about a couple of weeks before the draft, and he told us here on the Sick Podcast that Juraj Slafkovsky should be the Montreal Canadiens' number one pick, and in the end, he was. And he told everyone that Shane Wright was not in his top three. He was number 4, and guess what? He was right about that as well. So now, seeing as he's been hot and he's been right very often over the last 3 weeks or so, let's see if he can guess the lineup. We bring him in. He's Grant McCagg, former Montreal Canadiens scout with Recruits.ca. What's going on?
Hey, Tony. Just ready to let you know, tell you what's what here.
Listen, I can't wait to get your opinion on this. I was so excited for you. I put conditioner in my hair before the show, and I'm ready to go.
I don't need to do that. I'm good.
Okay, well, maybe if you put conditioner, your hair will grow. You never know, but I doubt it. Listen, all right, so Jeff Petry's been traded. So has Ryan Poehling. Michael Matheson has been acquired on defense. We'll take a look at the defense, but for the most part, I'm interested in taking a look at the forward lines because everyone wants to know, is Juraj Slafkovsky going to start the season in Montreal? And with guys like Hoffman and Drouin and Dadonov on the team as wingers, not to mention Gallagher and Anderson, a lot of people are wondering, where does Hoffman fit in? Where does Drouin fit in? Some believe that one of the two might not have a spot in the lineup if the season were to start today. So I ask you, and I think you put it on Twitter, let's bring it up. Habs forward depth. Suzuki in between Caulfield and Slafkovsky. Kirby Dach with Drouin and Anderson. Dvorak with Dadonov and Gallagher. Evans with Pitlick and Armia. The extras are Pezzetta, Ylonen, Hoffman, Byron, who's on the IR, and Raphael Harvey-Pinard, in your opinion. Now, of course, these are not set in stone, and these are not Marty St. Louis lines, or maybe they are. So this is the way you see it today, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I was just, you have to put names somewhere, right, when you're trying to show the forward depth. And, I mean, that's the lines I'd look at to start the year. And, I mean, it seems like every year things get jumbled in Montreal. They don't last for long. So, those are the lines to start the season, maybe. And, I mean, a lot will depend on what Slafkovsky does in training camp, obviously.
Well, and I was just going there because, look, when they drafted him, the first thing that came to everyone's mind is Suzuki, Caulfield and Slafkovsky will be together for a decade. It has all the makings of a very good line. Having said that, Juraj Slafkovsky is A, 18 years old, B, it would be his first year in the National Hockey League, C, it's Montreal, and there's a lot of pressure to perform and whatnot. And it's a big step in the National Hockey League at 18 years old, playing on a number one line, probably getting about 17 minutes a game, going up against another team's shutdown line, going up against the team's first pairing on defense. Vinny Lecavalier said that he really loved the way Jacques Demers handled him, because in his first season in the National Hockey League, as an 18-year-old, he played on the third line with some good veterans, and they brought him along slowly but surely, and he didn't feel that much pressure. I listened to that, and I think that if the season were to start today, if Slafkovsky were to start the season in Montreal, he'd start on the third line.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I don't know that. I think it's going to. I think they're going to try him probably with those two in camp. Maybe an exhibition game or two, and if he struggles some, then yeah, I can see him starting or lower in the lineup if they light it up.
Yeah,
I could see them. I think they'll try it, Tony, because he's the ideal fit there. Dadonov's not the ideal fit with Caulfield and him. That's not much size on the wings on the top line.
It's something that you can use on home ice when you have the last line change. But if you're on the road and you don't have the last line change, obviously it's not ideal. Look, Josh Anderson would be ideal for the line if Josh Anderson would play his best hockey every game. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. He struggles with consistency.
Yeah, I don't know that, Anderson I don't think he's a first line forward. He doesn't have the greatest vision. He he drives to the net. He doesn't always hit the net. He's not real accurate with his shot. He's inconsistent with his point producing. He's never got more than 40 points in a year. So ideally you want someone with more skill and vision on the top line, better hands. And that's Slafkovsky. I realize though, you don't want to rush the kid. That's for sure. Yeah. And everyone will point back to Kotkaniemi too and say, look, they put him in the lineup right away and he didn't develop properly. You don't want him to lose his confidence. So they'll be careful with him, I think. And a lot will ride on how he looks in the exhibition games, I think.
Yes. Having said that, and I know that exhibition, it doesn't, paint a true picture, because veterans are coasting in preseason play. There's a lot of younger players. There's a lot of weaker players. And there are players who have come into Montreal, dominated the preseason before. The fans chanted their name. The media pushed for them to make the team. And then all of a sudden you realize that a couple of months later, the reality was much different.
Yeah, Latondras, I think maybe you're thinking of,
Maybe. Mike Ribeiro?
Mike Ribeiro, yeah. There have been a few through the years. Certainly from a physical standpoint, though, I think, Slafkovsky is a different animal. And none of those guys that were first overall picks either, right? So
correct.
He has the pedigree and the size and I think the makeup, like the personality, the confidence to make the team and to play wherever they want him to play. He proved that with Slovakia, where he led the team in ice time.
Yeah.
Against NHL players, all these other teams that he was playing against, Canada and Finland, and that they're all NHL players mostly, and he looked really good. So, and he wasn't playing with Caulfield and Suzuki either. So I'm really excited to see how they look, and I hope. And knowing Marty St. Louis and the way he moved him up to, he moved Suzuki and Caulfield together almost right away, and he seems to get it. When it comes to you put your best, the guys with the most potential, you put them in offensive roles, and you give them offensive players, and you give them that opportunity, and that's a breath of fresh air in Montreal with the coaching, with the conservative coaching staffs that they've had before.
You can follow the Sick Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. And the beauty of it is you're going to be notified if we ever go live or if we upload an episode. Let's bring back up Grant's picks for those who are following here on video. Okay, so I believe that if Slafkovsky starts in Montreal, he'll start on the third line. He's not going to finish there, but I believe he'll start there. I believe what could happen is you could have Hoffman or Dadonov playing on that line on home ice and Josh Anderson playing on that line with Suzuki and Caulfield on the road. That's the way I could see it going down. That's my way of getting Hoffman in this lineup here because, look, let's face it, Hoffman has the upcoming year and another year after that under contract. They can still move him, but if he's going to be here, they're going to have to play him. So I think if you're going to have to play him, you don't want him on your third line because that might be somewhat of a shutdown line. He's not a defensively responsible player. Drouin wouldn't be on that line either because 200-foot game is not his strength either. So in Hoffman's case, you either put him on the number 1 line, I think, because I think Drouin will be on the number 2 line, or you put him on a number 4 line, which is a checking line, but with the thought process that he'll get much better matchups on that line and he could probably score a couple of goals. You see that?
Yeah, that makes sense, totally. But I find it hard to envision Dadonov and Hoffman both being in the lineup. You know, they just I just don't know. They need a little more, especially with Pitlick too. I like Pitlick, but he's not overly big, and you already have Caulfield who's not big. I mean, I think they ideally want some size in there, and especially in the bottom 6. I don't see him. I'm wondering. I mean, unfortunately, I don't know cap stuff that well, and whether a buyout would even be something that they would consider with Hoffman if they can't trade him.
I mean, Drouin becomes a candidate because he's got 1 year left. But at the same time, you would think that let's just say they hold on to Drouin and then you get to trade deadline day. Well, trade deadline day, if that's at the end of February, early March, and the season ends mid-April, the team that's going to acquire him is only going to have to pay him for about a month and a half. So I believe that Jonathan Drouin will be dealt for sure. I don't know when, but worst case scenario at the very latest, trade deadline day.
I've been anxious to see how he'll play under Marty. I mean, we saw the transformation in Caulfield's game when he got to play under Marty, and I'm still holding out hope. I mean, what's he, 25 or 26 now? I mean, that's when your prime is in the NHL. He's battled injuries and some some other things in the last couple of years and stuff, but I do believe he was leading the team in points per game when he got injured. You know, like he's still he's got so much skill, and he's still
that he does 100% for sure.
And he's still only 26, and I don't know. I mean, if he comes back and he plays well under Marty, I don't know that he'll be traded. I mean, he can still be he can still help the power play immensely. He's got such great edges, and he can make such great plays. I still hold out hope, certainly more so than Hoffman. I think Hoffman's on Hoffman's older, and he's not going to get any better. And I think Drouin can there's still some untapped potential there. So that's why I prefer him.
Hoffman would be the guy because if you'd have to, if you're thinking of trading one of the two, saying, you know what, I can't have both those players on my team. With all due respect to Hoffman, I mean, he's the guy that you want to trade because, like you said, he's older and he's not going to get better. Now, some will say that Drouin won't get better either. And you know what? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But, you're right in saying He's much younger. There still is some untapped potential there. And he was leading the team in points when he went down with the injury. And as a matter of fact, I believe he was leading the team in points when he had suffered a broken wrist a couple of years before that in that game versus the Washington Capitals. So in his case, I mean, staying healthy is the biggest challenge. If he can do so, he does pick up points. You just have to learn to live with his warts. And his warts are that, he's not going to bring it every night. But at the end of the year, if he's healthy, you'll like the amount of points that he picks up.
I even didn't think his competitiveness the last couple of years, not every game, like you say, that's just not him, unfortunately. But I think his all-around game, his competitiveness did pick up some. I've seen improvements in it, and I'm just hoping that, it's part of the maturity process, and he's got to realize that this is the last chance with the Canadians, that's for sure.
I'll tell you what I do like. Whether he plays with a 6'4" Kirby Dach, who's probably you would think is going to be motivated to play his first season in Montreal and something to prove, and he'll thrive under Marty St. Louis too, you would think. And Josh Anderson's size and strength, and he and Anderson have a real good friendship. They've talked about it, of course. If it's with Dach and Anderson, or it's with Dvorak, who plays a good 200-foot game to be able to compensate, and Anderson, either or, there's the makings of a good line there.
Yeah, good points. I mean, he hasn't necessarily had big line mates in it, and all the combinations that they've tried him with in the past, certainly a big center, with Kirby Dach's potential. He hasn't played with a center like Dach with the Canadians, not even close. So, and like I keep saying about Marty, I just like the way that Marty thinks the game and how it's about concepts and and I think that that's something that Drouin might thrive under. And I mean, the potential is still there, and I still maintain hope he's not gone. So you got to hope for the best for him.
Yeah. Well, listen, when you say good points by me, I'm not just another pretty face, I'm more than that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. All right. Who's going to lead the Canadians in points in the upcoming season? Well, it's something that you can put $1 or $2 down on Betway. For the love of the game, sign up and deposit on Betway for a 100% deposit bonus, the easiest sportsbook for Canadians. E-transfers are accepted just like that. All right. Now, you didn't weigh in on Twitter on D, but how would you see the defense pairings if the season were to start right now?
Yeah. Right defense seems to be, who's going to be the top pairing right defenseman? That's the big question right now. I do suggest in that tweet, or at least another one, maybe, that with the depth that they have, maybe they do try to trade a couple of those wingers for a right defenseman.
Yeah, that would make sense.
If they can't, Jordan Harris, as a freshman in college, played on the top pairing in Northeastern on the right side, and he was excellent. Anytime he ever did play on the right side in Northeastern, and Hughes and Gorton, I'm sure, know all about this and saw a lot of it, and Marty too, Marty with his connections with the Northeastern too. I wouldn't be surprised if they are projecting him on the right side.
The defense partner would have to be Joel Edmondson?
I don't know if it's the top pairing. I mean, that's a lot to ask for a kid to come in, right?
Yeah.
But they also have Weidman.
So you do it by committee, right? You don't have to give one defense pairing the most minutes. You can give your top two defense pairings this, very, very close amount of minutes. So let's say, for example, you can put Matheson with Savard, and you could put Edmondson with Jordan Harris. And then at that point, you can have Gooley with Schoenemann or Weidman. Do they have Barron in there too? If they have Gooley and they have Jordan Harris, and I don't know, do they? That would be three young defensemen.
Yeah, I think they're going to have at least two. I know a lot of people have been saying that they think it'll only be one, but the way things are shaping up, I think that they're, maybe looking and exploring at having two young blue liners back there. And I mean, it's not unprecedented by any means. The Rangers a couple of years ago, Conde Miller and Schneider this year, same age basically as those guys. They came in and they're in the top 6, and they made a good playoff run. So I mean, I think that Barron, Gooley, it's going to be even I'm not even counting out Jack-Eye and Fairbrother. Madison Bowie's in the mix. Otto Leskinen. They brought back Otto Leskinen, and he, he showed signs that he could play in the NHL before. He's a really nice puck moving defenseman.
I'd be a little surprised. I mean, I think if you listen to them carefully, Kent Hughes and Marty St. Louis are fans of Corey Schooneman. I think Schooneman will be in that lineup. They even talked about him when they talked about potential players playing on the right side as well.
And of course, Schooneman too. But I mean, there's probably 10 defensemen in the mix right now.
How about this? How about a defense by committee? You have 7D and you have 11 forwards. Are you a fan? Yes or no? And I know it's all coaches aren't usually crazy about it. They like to roll 3 pairs of defense and like to roll 4 lines. And I know it's circumstantial. It all depends on what team and what personnel, but you think it could work?
Well, when you've got 15 forwards and 5 defensemen, it doesn't really make sense. You're having a hard time getting 6. So why would you go with 7 when you got 15 legitimate NHL forwards and then you go with 11? So no,
I'll tell you why.
Just from the strength point of view, I don't think that works.
Okay, so let's say you have Matheson, that's 1. You have Edmondson, that's 2. You have Gooley, that's 3. You have Harris, that's 4. You have Savard, that's 5. You had Wyman, that's 6. You have Schooneman, that's 7. You could do it. Now, the reason why I bring it up, you know why. If you have 7D and you have 11 forwards, you're going to end up double shifting your best players.
Yeah. But do you want to, do you want your best players not playing with it? Like, if your top line's clicking, do you want them playing with every line, or do you want
teams, of course, you don't start off this way, and they see how it's going, and if they find if there's a shortage of goals and they don't really have chemistry with their lines, then they try and double shift their best players. That was actually more for Peter from Côte St. Luc than it was for me or you, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a big 7 defenseman. I played a lot of defense growing up, and defensemen like to be out there. When you got 7, you're not getting as much ice time, and they're sharper. The more and anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, they want to play that. And if you got 7 defensemen, you don't have many of them that are playing 15 to 20 minutes.
Speaking of my shirt of double shifting your best players, you can pick up our sick merchandise at sportbuffshop.com. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. You can shop all of their sports licensed lifestyle apparel, including hoodies, caps, T-shirts of your favorite teams of all major leagues. Once again, you can follow us on all social media platforms. Grant, my final question to you, probably my final question. It's very easy. Do you like the Canadians on paper right now? And let's put things in context, right? Kent Hughes said it himself. I mean, they're not going to be going for a Stanley Cup. You know where I stand on this. I'm hoping that they're actually going to be pretty bad for 3 or 4 years. And then this way they can be able to, accumulate top 5 draft picks, maybe 3, maybe 4, 5 would be great. I think that's the big recipe to success and sustaining it in the National Hockey League. But do you like what you see? Do you like what Kent Hughes is building here?
I think it's gonna be an exciting team. They're gonna score a lot of goals, but I also think they're gonna let in a lot of goals this year. So, I don't know if you're still doing the over-unders there, Tony, but I'd go over, a little more than I go under.
I usually take overs of the first month of the season or the first month and a half for sure, because defensive systems are still a little rusty at that point.
And there's going to be a new defensive coach too. Don't forget, there'll be a new defensive system having to be implemented. I mean, I love Luke Richardson. I I think he was an underrated coach, and they're going to miss him. So,
Yeah.
And then with the question marks in goal, so it's the back end where the question marks are, right? The in goal and on defense. So I think there's going to be a lot of 5-4 games and stuff like that, which is exciting for the fans, but not always exciting for the coaches.
I think I read somewhere in Grant McCagg's top 60 to go in the NHL draft, I think 54 of them went in the top 60. Is that right? I think that's what I read. Is that correct?
Oh, I didn't count it up, but that's probably.
I think I read that. I think you had 54 of the 60, and we know you had the number 1, and we know you had Shane Wright at 4. So the month of July has been your month. So congratulations to you. It's been a great month for recruits and recruits.ca. You can sign up to his publication, because if you weren't sold on it before, I guess you're going to have to be sold on it now. He could be right once, and you might think he's lucky, but if he's right 2 times or 3 times or 54 out of 60, well, then that means at a certain point that he knows what he's doing and he's pretty good. If he wasn't, I wouldn't get him on the podcast. Grant, thanks for doing this, man. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Always appreciate it, Tony.
You're very welcome. He's Grant McCagg, former Montreal Canadiens scout, now with Recruits and Recruits.ca. I'm Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Tell your friends about it. The entire city's talking about the Sick Podcast. We're gaining momentum each and every day. Why? Because what I told you from the beginning, the podcast was going to be sick. And another reason, I don't play to lose.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature, and Lacage. If the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you.